Hey guys, we're back. This week we're talking about Langan's Technicolor, so hopefully you were able to read that or listen to it. If you didn't get all the way through, listen the audio version of that's pretty well done on Pseudopod. So they do some pretty cool stuff. So John Langan, he's a I guess you would call him a weird fiction, maybe. He does some straight up horror stuff. He's a guy from upper New York, Hudson Valley area. So a lot of his stories kind of take place in that environment. This one's a little more unique. I think this was part of a collection, I think, where all the stories were based on Poe in some way. So pretty cool riff on, I think, the Mask of the Red Death. I think it's actually really cool what he does with this story. Langan is kind of known for that this sort of like Russian nesting doll story where it's like a story inside a story inside a story. And so we see that going on in here. I hope you were able to get through it. I know it's long, but the ending has such a great payoff. I think it's worth it. And I just think it's cool what he does with it, the idea that he comes up with and the way that he blends in the Gnosticism. The Gnostics were this weird sect of, I guess you would call Christianity, although people would probably balk at that, who believe that the physical world was evil and sort of a misleading thing, and that they didn't really believe that Jesus actually walked the earth. They thought he was more of a spirit, and so there's all this heretical stuff that comes along with that. But the interesting idea is that like the physical world is evil, and that there's this greater reality outside of that, which obviously has been something that people have argued about for centuries, right? And so it's kind of cool what Langan does with Beaujolais' story. That's nested inside the overall story of the professor giving a lecture to the students who may or may not be paying attention. So maybe you better pay attention when the professor's lecturing next time, right? So, and then within that, we have the Poe aspect of the story, which he takes liberty with a lot of those details. Although they do wonder if Poe may have had some kind of brain tumor or something weird going on at the end of his life, because he did increasingly was acting very erratically and doing strange things. And they found him. I don't know if I mentioned that in one of the other videos, but they found Poe um, not in his own clothes, and he was had been beaten up pretty badly and totally drunk, so they weren't really sure what happened to him. They think maybe he was a victim of cooping, which is where they would go around and grab people and get them drunk, and then they would take them to different polling stations and have them vote, and then basically beat them to death or leave them for dead. So he might have been a victim of that. We don't know, but it's kind of cool what Langan does with the different colors, and the way that we see things, and the way that we can, if we were to take some of those colors away or remove them, what our reality would be. It's kind of a cool idea. It's cool the way I think that he brings in the professor, having kind of figured out some part of that mystery, and is trying to usher in something malevolent at the end of the story, which I think is one of the keys. And it was one of, I was trying to trick you guys when I asked you to write about it, because I wanted you to really think about, ooh, what would I do if I had this power? And what happens is people usually gravitate towards, being, some all-powerful ruler that's going to create some type of utopian society, right? And what they overlook in that is, in order to be that kind of ruler, you have to kind of dictate to everyone else what utopia is going to be. And so we start talking about lofty ideals like love and justice and equality and goodness and all of these things, which are very, very much things that are subjective and have to be negotiated between people, right? Like a sense of justice between is never going to be this exactly the same between two people, and so those things have to be negotiated. So if you're just going to dictate what that is, you're kind of turning yourself into a little bit of a monster. So I wanted you to see that. Not saying that there have been rulers throughout human history who've had a lot of power, who were able to wield it fairly effectively, but it still limits the rights of others in some way. So there's a little bit of struggle going on there. And then, of course, the other issue with that is if we were able to just kind of remake reality, is our humanity going to get in the way of that? The famous Russian writer Dostoevsky um, talked a lot about that he felt like that human beings had this some inherent part of our nature, whether you want to call that fallen or whatever, that just seemed to always get in the way. And that even if we were able to create a utopia, if we had the power to just say, hey, I'm going to fix everything, I'm going to reshape reality and just make it perfect, that human beings would want to screw it up. Like we would want to try to destroy it. So if we could create a society that was utopian, we would find some way to break it, because we don't like that. We like having a little bit of chaos and things like that. So he's got some interesting things to say about that. If you're interested, I would highly recommend that you check out his work. He's a very famous Russian writer. Russians are heavy and a little bit dark too, though, but there's some great stuff. Langan too. If you like this story, I would really encourage you to read him. I think he's one of the more talented people that's writing in this in fiction today. He's really doing some unique stuff. His short fiction especially is great. So this was a fun one. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back next week. Have a great rest of your week.